Hi, my name is Christopher Thomas, Data Compliance Analyst with the Office for the Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition. This is a brief video training explaining how to use the reservation system in Empower Lancaster for shelter programs. The reservation system allows us to create bed nights automatically for clients who are in residence at a shelter without having to create every single bed night for every single day individually. So it has the potential to save us a lot of time. To start off with, of course, you'll need to log in. Make sure that your role is set to case manager up here in the top right. Now, before we can do any reservations, we do need to enroll our client, right? So that's a prerequisite for everything that's going to be explained in this video. How to enroll clients is explained in a different video that's also on this same channel. So if you're not sure about that or you have questions, you want to brush up, I would recommend pausing and going and checking out the enrollments video. So we're going to assume that our test client here is already enrolled in the shelter project that we want to create bed nights for. And he is. We can see Christopher right here under open program name. I see that he has an open enrollment under the Lancaster County Food Hubs Emergency Shelter. It was created today because I just did that enrollment a minute ago. But this is the one prerequisite. We can also check to see where a client is enrolled by going to case management and then program enrollment. It'll show you the same information, which programs the client enrolled in and what was their enrollment date. So that's been taken care of. The next step is going to be creating the reservations. So you'll use this button here, so my mouse at the top of the screen, next to case management where it says organization. Click there, the screen will change. Now, before we do anything, you'll need to make sure that you have the correct organization selected, your organization that you're trying to create reservations for. Now, you may not need to do this if you're already logged in that way, but it always never hurts to check anyway, right? So click Find Organization. You can either look for your organization's name here or just scroll down until you find it. So like I said, we're going to do this for the Lancaster County Food Hubs Shelter Project at Ebenezer. Click here. You'll notice nothing's happening because I've already got that organization selected. But you should always do this just in case because you're going to be confused if you go in and find that you're looking at the wrong organization. So that's done. The next step is to click up here, click Providers, then click Providers. Now select the providers, the word that EL uses, but really you're looking for what's the program that you're doing this under. So we're doing this for the Lancaster County Food Hubs Emergency Shelter. Click the gear next to the program that you want, then click Resources. And finally, pick which resource associated with that program you want to create the reservation for. So find the emergency shelter if there's more than one option. So here we know it's the Ebenezer building. I can see here that it's got it's set up to have a capacity of 40. Right now, there's no one enrolled, but we're going to change that here in a second. So click that gear and then select the second option, reservation. Okay, so what we're looking at now is a list of all of the reservations in this date range for this resource. Now I'm doing this in the test environment, so no one right now has any reservations for the Lancaster County Food Hub. But this is where you could see who has active reservations. Right now we have none. We know that Christopher is not on this list, but using our imaginations, let's say he's going to be in residence tonight, 11/2/23. So we need to add a reservation for him. All you need to do is click Add Row up here, creates a new row. Click the little magnifying glass here to find the client who you want to create that reservation for. We're going to do it for Thomas Christopher. Search. There is my client. If you need to, want to be sure if it's a common name, you can check the birth date just to be sure. But I know I already checked. He's enrolled in this program. There's only one Christopher Thomas here. So I'm going to click on his name. And now that's filled in. All we need to do now is pick our start and end date. So Christopher, it's certainly best to do this the day of, right? So if Christopher is going to be a guest tonight, I want to create a reservation for him that afternoon or evening. So I'm going to create this for 11/2, and I'm going to leave that end date open. So what this means is that starting today, Empower Lancaster is going to create a bed night for Christopher every single day until we reach his end date. Now, of course, Christopher has no end date, so this is going to happen in perpetuity. We'll talk a little bit more about how to change these settings because eventually that client will no longer be in residence, but we will get to that in just a second. First, we're just going to show you how to finish making that reservation. So we've got our client, our start date, leave our end date open, and click Save. And now if we go back where we were a second ago to reservations, a new row shows up. There's Christopher. Start date is today. His end date is open. Something I want to point out is that you don't need to do this process over and over and over again. You can actually add multiple rows. So click 1, 2, 3 times. And now when I go down here, I see that 1, 2, 3 new rows were created. So if I wanted to check in 5 clients at a time, 10 clients at a time, I could do these steps, finding the client, for all 3 in this case, and then click Save. I wouldn't recommend that you do, let's say we're using this example where there's 40 beds. I would not recommend adding 40 rows and filling in 40 client names. It makes more sense to break it down into 5s or 10s because nothing is going to save here until I click down here, right? So if I do 30 of my 40 clients and then my computer dies or the internet drops out or Empower Lancaster has some kind of fatal crash, you're going to lose your work. So it's better to break that work down into smaller chunks so that you don't lose anything. When you cancel, I don't want to create any more. Okay, so far we've gone over how to create a reservation. Just to repeat that again, I am in here as a case manager, click organization, find my organization just to be safe. I'm going to do this for the Ebenezer shelter. So I'm going to click on Lancaster County Food Hub, then click providers, pick the program you're doing this under. In this case, it would be the emergency shelter. Click the gear, click resources, pick the specific part of that project. So in this case, it's the Ebenezer emergency shelter. Click the gear and click reservation. This is a process you only need to follow once per client stay, right? So you don't need to do this every day. You don't need to do this every week. As long as a client's in residence and they have an open reservation, the system will automatically make their bed nights. So you can imagine if a client is in residence for 30 days, system will save you the trouble of entering 30 individual bed nights. Multiply that by 40 beds for this project. It's a lot of time. So this is a big time saver. So we're going to pause here. And when we come back, we will talk about how to edit these reservations when a client is no longer in residence. And we'll also talk about the process for exiting clients who aren't just not in resident, but who have left the program altogether. So we'll pause here. Okay, so we're going to talk about 2 more things quickly. One is ending reservations, and that'll also kind of lend itself to talking about cleaning up, doing reconciliation to delete any extra bed nights. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. And then also, how does this work with exiting clients? So every day that Christopher's got an open reservation, he'll appear in this list, right? So if I came back tomorrow, 11/3/23, he'd be here. Same goes for 11/30/23. As long as he has that open reservation, the system's going to keep him on this list. Now, to change that, you'll click this little check, and I will emphasize you will not click delete. because deleting would delete the record of Christopher ever having this particular reservation. What we want to do is set an end date. So using our imaginations, let's say that Christopher was here on 11/2. He's here for the next few days, but 11/7 rolls around and Christopher does not return. So his reservation is ended. The bed he was occupying is now being occupied by someone else, and I want to end this reservation. You can always create a new one. There's not like you only have one reservation per person, right? So if on 11/14 Christopher's back in residence, you can on the 11/14 create a new reservation, right? But this is how we'll kind of cap off how long that stay was. So let's say it is the afternoon, evening of 11/7. Christopher is not here. He no longer has a reservation because he no longer has a bed to occupy. When I'm going in and adding my reservations for any new clients, I'm also going to want to close reservations for clients who are no longer here, right? So to do that, set an end date. You would just go in here and say his end date was 11/7 and save. So now what happens is the system is going to continue to create those bed nights until it hits the end of that reservation. So if I'm correct about that, if we look at the 10th, we won't see Christopher because he doesn't have a reservation that's open on that date, right? Another possibility, getting back to where we were a second ago, would be that maybe Christopher was in residence 5 days here. He's in residence for only 4 of those 5 days, right? So we didn't end reservation. We made a plan. He's going to come back, but he was not here one of those nights. You do not necessarily need to continually close and open reservations, creating new ones each time if there's some inconsistency in how long how many nights a client is in residence, right? So if there's some inconsistency, you can do manual cleanup. It might make the most sense to do this at the end of the month before billing gets done, that kind of reconciliation process where you would compare who has bed nights and how many against what your shelter log says. I'm obviously happy to discuss at any point what process works best. I can help you get that report pulled down that would show how many people had how many nights. But just to quickly get back to what I was trying to say a second ago, let's say Christopher didn't have a bed night one of these nights, and we don't want to charge for a bed night that didn't exist, right? So all I need to do that, we're going to get back to where we were a minute ago. I'm going to go to case management. This is how you normally see Empower Lancaster. When you log in, you're looking at case management. You can create, or rather delete, those bed nights that don't belong by clicking here on case management and then clicking services, finding the bed night with the date that you wish to delete, clicking the gear, and then clicking delete. Christopher, this is kind of a good lesson here. We just created that reservation, but no time has passed, right? So none of those bed nights have been created. If we came back here on the 7th, we would see that bed nights were logged one day after the next. All I'd need to do is find the bed night when Christopher was not in residence, click the gear, and click delete. That's what that cleanup process can look like. The other thing I want to make sure I mention is that this process goes in kind of in one direction, right? So we had to go enrollment created, reservation created, and then bed nights get created automatically. To do the reverse of this, the client exits our program, whether that's to a different program, to housing, whatever the case may be, if we want to exit someone, not just delete extra bed nights, not just end their reservation, but remove them from the program altogether, we need to do that process in reverse. So you need to make sure that client's reservation is closed before you go through the steps to exit them. Again, exiting a client is a whole other process. It is described in another video on this channel. But the important part to remember is that you need to end the reservation before you exit that client. Okay, so that's the whole story for reservations. If you have questions, feel free to email me, um, or submit a help ticket using this support button here on the left side. Thank you very much.